Hey everyone, and welcome back to Chat Like a Native. You know that feeling you get when you try to speak English in a real conversation? Yeah, we're going to tackle that today. We're diving deep into the art of small talk.
Small talk.
It may seem simple, but trust me, mastering this can seriously boost your confidence and fluency.
Small talk can feel kind of scary, though, especially when you're still learning English.
Oh, absolutely. It can be super intimidating. Which brings us to a good question. Why even bother with small talk?
Well, it's not just random chit-chat. It's actually the key to making deeper connections. It's like breaking the ice,
Wow.
making everyone feel comfortable.
So it's about building that rapport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially for English learners, it's like a low-pressure way to practice.
Oh, that's a good point. No pressure, just chatting.
Right. And think about this. It can also help in more formal settings, like before a big meeting. Helps to ease the tension before getting down to business.
Yeah, like a warm-up before a game. Makes sense. But how do you even start? The starting part is always the hardest for me.
You know what? It's simpler than you think. A friendly hello or a good morning with a smile can work wonders.
The smile goes a long way.
It really does. It shows you're open and ready to chat. And people pick up on that.
So it's all about that first impression,
Sure.
setting the tone.
Exactly. But then comes the, okay, what next part.
Yeah, after the hello, what do you even talk about?
This is where being observant comes in handy. Look around you. There's always something to comment on.
You mean like the weather?
Yeah. The weather is a classic. Or maybe something about where you are. This coffee shop is cozy. Something like that.
So just find something you genuinely notice and mention it.
Exactly. It's way more natural than trying to come up with some clever line.
And it shows you're engaged with what's around you.
Right. Now, here's another tip. Ask open-ended questions.
Open-ended?
Yeah. Instead of asking something that gets a yes or no, try something that gets them talking.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Instead of, do you work here? Try, what do you do here? Get them to tell you more.
Oh, I see. It invites a longer response. Makes the conversation more interesting.
Exactly. And it shows you're genuinely interested in what they have to say.
Okay, so no more simple yes or no questions. Got it. That can be a conversation killer for sure.
It happens to everyone. But when you ask those open-ended questions, you give them a chance to share more about themselves. And that's how you really connect.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the greeting, the icebreaker. Now, how do you keep the conversation going?
That's where active listening comes in. It's not just about hearing the words. It's about really paying attention.
So no checking your phone while they're talking.
Exactly. Put the phone away, make eye contact, and focus on what they're saying. And a great way to show you're listening, ask follow-up questions.
Follow-up questions.
Yeah, like if they mention they love to cook, you could ask, what's your favorite dish to make, Dig a little deeper.
So you're taking what they say and running with it.
Right. Show them you're interested in what they have to share. It's like a ping pong game. You hit the ball back and forth and the conversation keeps flowing.
Makes sense.
And you know what? You shouldn't be afraid to share a little about yourself, too.
Oh, really? I feel like a lot of English learners hesitate to do that.
I know. But it actually helps to create a more balanced and engaging conversation.
I never thought about it like that.
It shows you're willing to be open and vulnerable, too. It encourages the other person to do the same.
So it's all about finding that balance between listening and sharing.
Exactly. Like a dance,
Yeah.
You take turns leading and following, asking questions and sharing your own stories. And sometimes those conversations, they hit a little snag.
Oh, yeah, those awkward silences. Those can be the worst.
Don't worry, they happen to everyone. And sometimes a pause is okay. It gives everyone a moment to gather their thoughts. But if it starts to feel a bit too long,
Yeah, what do you do then?
you can always use a transition phrase to smoothly shift to a new topic. Imagine you were talking about someone's trip and the conversation starts to fade. You could say, speaking of travel, I've always wanted to visit. Have you ever been there? Or if you're talking about food, you could say, that reminds me of a great restaurant I tried recently. Just create a smooth connection between ideas.
So it's like building a bridge instead of jumping to a completely different subject.
Exactly. It keeps the conversation flowing naturally.
Okay, those are good tips. Now, I'm curious about body language. Does that matter in small talk too?
Absolutely. It's like the secret sauce. It can make you seem more confident, approachable, and engaging.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
Right. For example, eye contact. It shows you're paying attention. But don't stare intensely. Just make eye contact while they're speaking and glance away occasionally.
Makes sense. What about smiling?
Smiling is like a universal welcome sign. It instantly warms up the conversation. And don't forget about posture.
Oh yeah, posture. I've definitely caught myself slouching when I'm nervous.
We all do it. But try to stand or sit up straight, shoulders relaxed. It makes you look more confident. And avoid crossing your arms. It can make you seem closed off.
Oh, I never realized how much body language can impact a conversation.
It's easy to overlook, but being mindful of your body language can make the whole interaction more positive and engaging for both of you.
This is all great advice. But we live in such a global world, and cultures can be so different. How do you navigate all those nuances? What works in one culture might not work in another.
That's a great point, and you're absolutely right. What's considered polite in one place might be totally different somewhere else.
So it's not just about the language, but the cultural context, too.
Exactly. For example, in some cultures, it's normal to ask about someone's family right away, but in other cultures, that's considered too personal.
Oh, wow. That's a big difference. So how do you avoid making those kinds of mistakes?
Doing a little research beforehand can help a lot. Read up on the customs and etiquette of the culture you'll be interacting with.
That makes sense. And when in doubt, err on the side of caution.
Exactly. Stick to neutral topics until you get a better sense of what's appropriate.
Okay, good advice. Now, are there any topics that are generally a no-go in small talk?
Yeah, there are a few danger zones you'll want to avoid, especially when you're first getting to know someone.
Like what?
Politics and religion are usually best to steer clear of. You don't want to accidentally start a debate when you're just trying to have a friendly chat.
Right. Best to keep things light until you know the person better.
Exactly. Stick to safer topics until you've built a bit more rapport.
Got it. Anything else to watch out for?
Oh yeah, personal space. Different cultures have different comfort levels with how close people stand during conversations.
So pay attention to their body language and try to match their distance.
Right. It's all about being respectful of those unspoken boundaries.
Okay, good to know. Now, even with all this great advice, sometimes those awkward silences still happen. What do you do then?
First of all, don't panic. Silences are a normal part of any conversation. Everyone needs a moment to think sometimes.
That's good to hear. I always feel like it's a bad sign when the conversation goes quiet.
No, not at all. But if it starts to feel a bit too long, you can always have some rescue topics ready.
Rescue topics.
Yeah, neutral topics that can help get the conversation flowing again, like hobbies, travel, movies, books, things like that.
Oh, it's smart. It takes the pressure off trying to come up with something brilliant on the spot.
Exactly. So if you're at a party and the conversation stalls, you can ask, have you seen any good movies lately? Or what are you reading these days? Or if you know they have a hobby, ask about that.
Great examples.
Yeah.
I like that a lot better than just letting the silence drag on.
Right. And remember, if all else fails, it's perfectly fine to politely excuse yourself from the conversation.
So you don't have to force it if it's not working.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need a break, or the conversation has run its course. It's all about reading the situation, doing what feels right for both of you.
That makes me feel a lot better. Now, even with all these tips and strategies, I'm sure there are still some common mistakes that people make, especially English language learners.
Oh, definitely. And one of the biggest ones, overthinking your words.
Overthinking.
People get so caught up in trying to sound perfect that they end up stumbling over their words or sounding stiff and unnatural.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. Your brain just freezes.
It happens. But remember, small talk is about connection, not perfection. It's okay to make mistakes. Just relax, be yourself, and focus on having a genuine interaction.
That's so true. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to sound fluent and intelligent.
Absolutely. And another mistake, talking too much or too little. You want to find a good balance where you're both contributing to the conversation.
It's about finding that rhythm, just like in a dance.
Exactly. And speaking of flow, don't use overly complex vocabulary just to impress.
Make it simple.
Right. Use language that feels natural to you. And last but not least, even in professional settings, don't shy away from casual conversation.
So even at a work event, it's okay to talk about things other than work.
Absolutely. Building a real connection can make future interactions so much better.
So even if you're at a networking event, don't be afraid to share something personal or ask about your weekend plans.
Exactly. People connect with people, not robots.
This has been so helpful. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on small talk.
I'm glad. Remember, it's a skill that gets better with practice. The more you do it, the more natural it will become. And don't forget those key ingredients we talked about: openness, curiosity, simplicity, and listening.
Those are definitely going to be my new small talk mantras. So embrace those opportunities to chat, even if it feels a bit awkward at first.
Exactly. Every conversation is a chance to learn, grow, and connect with someone new. And you never know. What starts as small talk could blossom into a great friendship or professional relationship.
I love that. So true. Now let's dive into some specific scenarios where small talk is really important,
Hmm.
like networking events or those everyday encounters. We'll talk about how to approach those with confidence.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, let's say you're at a networking event surrounded by people you've never met before. It can be a bit overwhelming, right?
Oh, I remember those days. Networking events can be a real challenge, especially for introverts. The key is to go in with a plan. Remember those 4 elements we talked about? Openness, curiosity, simplicity, and listening. Those are your superpowers in any networking situation.
Right. So a warm smile, good eye contact, and approachable posture. All of that helps signal that you're ready to connect. But how do you actually break the ice without feeling awkward?
Keep it simple. Look for someone who seems friendly and not already deep in conversation. You can start with a simple introduction and a genuine compliment. For example, "Hi, I really love what brings you here today?"
Okay, I like that. Start on a positive note, and by asking an open-ended question, you're inviting them to share a bit about themselves. But what if you find networking events completely draining? Any tips for surviving those?
Absolutely. First, set realistic goals for yourself. You don't have to talk to everyone in the room. Focus on having a few quality conversations rather than trying to collect business cards from every single person. It's about quality interactions, not quantity.
That takes the pressure off. And I love the idea of focusing on quality over quantity. It's so much more rewarding to have a genuine connection with a few people than to superficially chat with a dozen.
Exactly. And don't forget to take breaks when you meet them. Step outside for some fresh air, grab a drink, or find a quiet corner to recharge. Networking events can be stimulating, so it's important to listen to your own needs and take care of yourself.
Those are great tips. Now let's shift gears to those everyday casual encounters, like when you're in line at the coffee shop or waiting for the bus. Are those good opportunities for small talk too?
Absolutely. Those everyday moments can be wonderful opportunities to brighten someone's day and practice your English in a low-pressure environment. You could comment on something you observe, like, "That's a beautiful scarf you're wearing," or "I love the music they're playing here."
So it's about being present and noticing those little details that can spark a connection.
I love that idea. It makes those mundane moments feel a bit more special.
Exactly. And you never know, a simple compliment or observation could lead to a delightful conversation.
Wow, this has been such a fantastic deep dive into the art of small talk. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on its importance and how to approach it with confidence. What would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important thing to remember is that small talk is about connection, warmth, and authenticity. Embrace those opportunities to chat with people, even if it feels a bit uncomfortable at first. With practice, you'll find that it becomes more natural and enjoyable. And who knows? Those small conversations could lead to big opportunities, new friendships, and a deeper sense of belonging in the English-speaking world. Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on Chat Like a Native. We hope you found this deep dive helpful. Remember, keep practicing those small talk skills. Every conversation is a chance to learn, connect, and grow. So we've covered greetings, icebreakers. Now, how do you keep the conversation flowing once you've got it started?
This is where active listening becomes super important. It's not just about hewing the words you know. It's about really tuning in to what the other person is saying and responding in a way that shows you're engaged.
So no zoning out or planning your next brilliant comment while they're talking.
Exactly. Put that phone away, make eye contact, and really focus on what they're sharing. A simple way to show you're listening is to ask follow-up questions based on what they've said. For example, if they mention they enjoy cooking, you could ask, "What's your favorite dish to make?"
So you're taking their lead and kind of digging deeper into the conversation, making it feel more like a genuine exchange of ideas.
Right. It shows you're not just going through the motions, but that you're genuinely curious about what they have to say.
And here's a thought. Don't be afraid to share a bit about yourself, too.
Oh, absolutely. Sharing is key.
I think a lot of English learners, myself included, sometimes hold back from sharing because they're worried about making mistakes or not sounding fluent.
And I totally get that. But it's actually by sharing that you create a more balanced and engaging conversation. It shows the other person that you're willing to open up, which encourages them to do the same.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between listening attentively and contributing your own thoughts and experiences.
Exactly. Think of it as a dance. You take turns leading and following, asking questions and sharing stories. And even with the best intentions, sometimes conversations, they hit a lull.
Ugh. Yes, those awkward silences. They can be the worst. What do you do when the conversation starts to fizzle out?
First things first, don't panic. A little silence is perfectly natural. Sometimes it's just a moment for both of you to gather your thoughts. But if it starts to feel uncomfortable, you can always use transition phrases to smoothly introduce a new topic.
I've heard of those, but I'm not always sure how to use them naturally. Could you give us some examples?
Of course. Imagine you were talking about someone's recent trip and the conversation starts to fade. You could say, speaking of travel, I've always wanted to visit. Have you ever been there? Or if you were talking about food, you could transition by saying, that reminds me of a great restaurant I tried recently. It creates a seamless link between ideas and keeps the conversation moving.
Those are really helpful examples. It's like building a bridge instead of jumping to a completely different topic.
Yeah.
What about body language? Does that play a role in small talk too?
Absolutely. Body language is like the secret ingredient that adds flavor to your words. It can make you appear more confident, approachable, and engaging.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it. What are some of the key things to keep in mind?
Eye contact is huge. It shows you're listening and interested, but avoid staring intensely as that can make people uncomfortable. Aim for a balanced look at the person while they're speaking and briefly glance away occasionally.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about smiling?
A genuine smile is a universal sign of warmth and friendliness. It instantly makes you more approachable and puts the other person at ease. And don't underestimate the power of a good posture.
Oh yeah, I've definitely caught myself slouching when I'm nervous, which probably doesn't project the best image.
It's something we all do. But try to stand or sit up straight with your shoulders relaxed. It makes you appear more confident and open to interaction. And avoid crossing your arms as it can make you seem closed off or defensive.
It's amazing how much these nonverbal cues can impact a conversation. Sometimes I think we get so focused on the words that we forget about all the other ways we're communicating.
It's easy to overlook, but by being mindful of your body language, you can create a more positive and engaging experience for both yourself and the person you're talking to.
This is all great advice. But we live in a global world, and cultures can vary widely masked. How do you navigate the nuances of small talk across different cultures?
That's an excellent point, and it's where things can get a little trickier. What might be considered polite or friendly in one culture could be seen as rude or intrusive in another.
So it's not just about learning the language, but also understanding the cultural context.
Precisely. For example, in some cultures, it's considered polite to inquire about someone's family or personal life, while in other cultures, those topics are considered too personal for casual conversation.
So how do you avoid those cultural faux pas?
Doing a little research before interacting with people from different cultures can go a long way. Read about their customs and etiquette. And when in doubt, err on the side of caution. Stick to more neutral topics like hobbies, travel, or current events until you get a better sense of what's appropriate.
That's great advice. It's better to be respectful and observe than to accidentally offend someone. Are there any topics that are generally best to avoid in small talk, regardless of culture?
Yes, there are a few landmines you'll want to steer clear of, especially when you're first getting to know someone. Politics and religion are often safe bets to avoid. You don't want to accidentally spark a heated debate when you're just trying to make friendly conversation.
Right. It's best to stick to lighter topics until you've built a bit more rapport and have a better understanding of the other person's viewpoints. Is there anything else we should be mindful of?
Yes, personal space. Different cultures have different norms for how close people stand or sit during conversations. Pay attention to the other person's body language and try to mirror their behavior to ensure everyone feels comfortable.
So it's all about being observant and respectful of those unspoken boundaries. Now, even with the best intentions and all this great advice, sometimes those awkward silences still creep in. Any tips for handling those gracefully?
Don't worry, silences are a natural part of any conversation. It's human nature to have those moments where you're searching for the right words or simply taking a pause to think.
That makes me feel better. So it's not necessarily a sign that the conversation is doomed.
Absolutely not. But if a silence starts to feel a bit too long, you can always have a few rescue topics in your back pocket. These are neutral topics that can help reignite the conversation, like hobbies, travel, movies, or books.
That's a brilliant idea. It takes the pressure off trying to come up with something witty or profound on the spot. Do you have any examples of those rescue topics in action?
Sure. Imagine you're at a party and the conversation with someone new stalls. You could say, have you seen any good movies lately? Or what are you reading these days? Or if you know they're interested in a particular hobby, you could ask, how did you get into?
Those are great examples. It feels so much less awkward than just letting the silence drag on.
Exactly. And remember, if all else fails, it's perfectly okay to politely excuse yourself from the conversation. You could say something like, "It was lovely chatting with you, but I need to refresh my drink." Or, "It was great meeting you, but I promised to catch up with a friend over there."
That's reassuring to know. Sometimes you just need a break, or the conversation has run its natural course. There is no need to force it.
Exactly. It's all about reading the situation and responding in a way that feels authentic and comfortable for both of you. Now, even with all these tips and strategies, there are still some common mistakes that people often make when it comes to small talk, especially English language learners.
Oh, I'm sure I've made my fair share. Fill me in so I can avoid those pitfalls in the future.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest ones?
One of the most common mistakes is overthinking your words. People get so caught up in trying to sound perfect or use impressive vocabulary that they end up stumbling over their words or coming across as stiff and unnatural.
Oh, I've totally been there. It's like your brain freezes and you can't even remember simple phrases.
It happens to the best of us. Remember, small talk is about connection, not perfection. It's okay to make mistakes. Everyone does. Just relax, be yourself, and focus on engaging with the other person.
That's such good advice. I think sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves, especially when we're speaking a second language. We want to sound fluent and intelligent, but that can backfire if we're not careful.
Absolutely. And another common mistake is either talking too much or too little. You want to find that sweet spot where you're contributing to the conversation, but also giving the other person space to share their thoughts.
It's about finding that rhythm and flow, just like in a dance. You don't want to step on each other's toes or leave one person leading the whole time.
Exactly. And on the note of flow, avoid using overly complex vocabulary just to impress. While it's great to expand your vocabulary, clarity is key in small talk. You want to ensure the other person understands you and feels comfortable responding.
So keep it simple and relatable. No need to whip out the thesaurus every other sentence.
Right. Use language that feels natural and comfortable for you. And finally, even in professional settings, don't be afraid to inject some casual conversation. Building a genuine connection can go a long way in establishing rapport and making future interactions more enjoyable.
So even if you're at a networking event, it's okay to talk about something other than your job title and industry jargon.
Absolutely. People connect with people, not robots. Share a funny anecdote, mention a hobby you're passionate about, or ask about their weekend plans. It helps break down those barriers and create a more human connection.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for approaching small talk with more confidence.
I'm glad to hear it. Remember, small talk is a skill that gets better with practice. The more you do it, the more natural it will become. And don't forget those key ingredients we talked about earlier: openness, curiosity, simplicity, and listening.
Those are definitely going to be my new small talk mantras. So embrace those opportunities to chat with people, even if it feels a bit awkward at first.
Exactly. Every conversation is a chance to learn, grow, and connect with someone new. And who knows? What starts as small talk could blossom into a meaningful friendship or professional relationship.
I love that. It's like planting a seed that could grow into something amazing.
Yeah.
But let's dive into some specific scenarios where small talk is especially important. Okay, so like networking events. For example, you're at one of those, and you're surrounded by people you don't even know.
Yeah, this can be tough.
Super intimidating.
Yeah.
What's your advice for those situations?
Well, remember those 4 elements we talked about? Openness, curiosity, simplicity, listening. They're your best friends in any networking situation.
Right. A warm smile,
Yeah.
good eye contact, approachable posture. All that helps. But how do you actually start talking to someone? It feels so awkward sometimes.
You know what? Don't overthink it. Just find someone who looks approachable, maybe not already deep in conversation, and just start with a simple introduction and a compliment. Hi, I really love what brings you here today? Something like that.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
And asking a question gets them talking too. But honestly, sometimes those events are so draining.
Yeah.
Any tips for surviving them?
Oh, definitely. First of all, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You don't have to talk to everyone. Just focus on a few meaningful conversations. It's not about collecting a ton of business cards, you know?
Quality over quantity.
Exactly. And it's okay to take breaks, too. Step outside, get some fresh air, grab a drink, or just find a quiet spot to recharge for a minute.
Those events can be a lot to take in. Makes sense to pace yourself. Okay, now what about those everyday encounters? Like when you're waiting in line for coffee or at the bus stop? Are those good chances to practice small talk too?
Totally. Those little moments can be a great way to brighten someone's day and practice your English without any pressure. You know, you could just comment on something you see, like, wow, that's a cool hat, or I love that song they're playing. Just something simple.
It's about being present and noticing the little things around you.
Right. And you never know. A small comment could spark a whole conversation.
I love that.
Uh-huh.
Well, this has been such a great deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of small talk. What would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the most important thing is just to remember that small talk is about connecting with people, being warm and genuine.
Yeah.
Just embrace those opportunities to chat, even if it feels a bit awkward at first. With practice, it gets easier, and you might be surprised at the connections you make.
So well said. Thanks for joining us on Chat Like a Native, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into small talk. And remember, keep practicing. Every conversation is a chance to learn, grow, and maybe even make a new friend.